Stick to the plan. Anticipate, don't improvise. The Killer is a Netflix original directed by David Fincher, who's done numerous, and I mean numerous, music videos. Check out his IMDb page. You may be surprised just how many music videos for various amounts of artists that David Fincher has done. But also, he's done a lot of films, like Alien 3. I really wish that he could have made Alien 3 in his own way, because the studio interference pretty much wrecked any potential for that movie to ever be good. But he also did Sevenin, which I know is 7, but they put 7 where the V is supposed to be, and it never made any goddamn sense to me. But it also showed that Kevin Spacey could be a creep, just in the movies and nowhere else. Also, The Game, that had Michael Douglas back before he looked like a human lizard. Fight Club, my favorite of his movies, even though it is polarizing, it's really goddamn good and actually makes you think. Even if you really try to add up the stuff, the movie doesn't make a whole lot of sense. His name was Robert Paulson. His name was Robert Paulson. His name was Robert Paulson. Also, he did Panic Room. Oh, wait, this is the Panic Room with memorabilia from the movie Panic Room. Panic Room. Good old Riff Tracks reference right there. Zodiac and Gone Girl Gone. The girl's gone. They're gone. The girl's gone. Can you tell that I'm trying to stall for time before I talk about The Killer? Let's talk about the writer, Andrew Kevin Walker, who did Brain Scan. This movie could have used one. Sevenin, 8mm, which actually started out okay and then went completely off the goddamn rails on a crazy train. Sleepy Hollow, The Wolfman, the 2010 one that, Benicio del Toro certainly tried, and Windfall. This has Michael Fassbender, who I have never called Michael Assbender. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? It's impossible not to do that, even though Michael Assbender is quite a good actor. Tilda Swinton is in this. Charles Parnell, who is also very good and has been good in quite a few other things. Arliss Howard, Carrie O'Malley, and various other people that you have seen in other films. But it centers around Michael Fassbender's The Killer. And basically, after a particular job in Paris, France goes absolutely tits up because of one minor thing that nobody could have anticipated, then something happens that necessitates Michael Fassbender going on a plot to, seek not revenge on people in a globe-trotting adventure that he insists isn't personal, but it's absolutely, totally personal. He's wrapping up loose ends of something that, through no fault of his own, ended up leading to somebody that he loves, meeting, a fate that nobody really should ever have to meet. And now he's like, okay, I'm coming after you all. And there you go. There's the plot of The Killer. I made it sound a lot more interesting than it actually was. Look, David Fincher makes movies that are kind of polarizing. And while I appreciate the fact that this movie tried to, make it where none of the characters had any, redeeming qualities about them, even Michael Fassbender's, because really, he has a particular set of skills, but wasn't exactly seen as the best guy. He is a hired killer, hence The Killer. And the people involved in this whole goddamn thing really aren't, anybody with any redeeming characteristics. But the thing is, this movie also had a $175 million budget, and I would like to know, A, why Netflix felt the need to throw that much money at David Fincher, even though David Fincher is a very good director. Did they throw about $85 million of it at Quaaludes for the cast? Because nobody seemed to really have any energy at all. It was like, oh, okay, this is what's going to happen. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. You accept your fate. You figure out what's going to happen. And yeah, Globe-Trotting Adventure. It has various chapter breaks and various things. This kind of reminds me of The Gray Man. Except I think this is more boring than The Gray Man. And that's saying something, because The Gray Man actually had $25 million more thrown at it, maybe possibly more, and Netflix just despite increasing the cost of their service and all the issues they had, they just seemingly are willing to throw endless amounts of money at people to direct movies that really, had this been a short series, it probably would have actually worked better, because you don't care about any of the characters, none. You don't care about Michael Fassbender's character. It's not an interesting movie by any stretch of the imagination. When you take, or rather withhold information from the viewers, you actually are supposed to replace it with something at least halfway interesting. This movie fails to do that. The narration also at first was fine and then got to the point where, okay, that's all this movie is. This felt disappointingly lazy and uninspired. And it was like, again, everybody used the massive amount of quaaludes that the budget allowed to just say, yeah, sure, take these, and nobody act like a human at any point. The action scenes aren't interesting. The couple fight scenes are not very interesting, and while there is a lot of talent in the cast, Michael Fassbender in particular, nobody seems to be. They look like they're waiting for a goddamn bus to take them elsewhere. I mean, nobody seems like they are really having a great goddamn time here. It also feels like we've just been plopped right in the middle of something, not even where explanation would have helped, but it almost feels like we're in the second part of a possible trilogy. Like, it's almost like that Mortal Engines movie. I mean, remember that movie where they just plopped us in? They're like, okay, let's just assume this stuff's happening, and this is why this stuff's happening. And you don't care. You don't care about anybody involved in this goddamn thing. There is one line that actually appropriately describes my feelings towards this. It's amazing how physically exhausting it can be to do nothing. Because this movie starts nowhere and somehow ends up in the same goddamn spot despite things allegedly happening. Yeah, $175 million for this. For this. There are independent movies. There are low-budget efforts. A24 could have taken this $175 million and made about 10 movies. They could have, I mean, maybe they actually probably could have made maybe a few more because they know how to stretch a dollar. Hell, you could have given this to you could have given this money among 50 independent directors, and they would have been able to come up with something better than this. I'm sorry, The Killer was just not good. Everybody's sleepwalking through the goddamn thing. And there was a tone about it that just didn't interest me at all. I am going to get into spoilers, but the spoilers will not take very long because there's nothing really to spoil because there's no plot. There's nothing interesting about this. It is on Netflix if you want to check it out. But yeah, let's get into spoilers. 3, 2, 1, it's on Netflix. Spoilers. Okay. So, for chapter 1, the target, he's in France. He's supposed to kill the guy, and then a dominatrix ends up interrupting that whole thing. I do have to say the woman who plays the dominatrix, who apparently did stunt work for some superhero movies like the Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame movies. She's fucking gorgeous. Wouldn't mind seeing her in more stuff. She's apparently also 43 and looks about 25, so good genetics there. But there is one. This movie also has a lot of stuff about advertising. Like this, he mentions how there's 1,500 McDonald's in France alone. And lo and behold, he suddenly, next scene, has a sack of McDonald's and is eating it right on the park bench because that sweet, sweet dollar. This movie is not made to be interesting. This movie is made to sell advertising. And yes, commercial movies generally do that, but some at least have a little energy, life, something to them. That was right there about where the movie lost me. But then the movie really started to lose me because he has endless, supplies of guns and shit all over the goddamn world. I mean, literally all over the world because he has more money because he's being funded by people, or he's just paid so goddamn well that those who can afford him will get him to do the job, and he has no allegiance to anybody. But then he goes on a revenge plot, proving that he is totally a liar. I did like the surgical table that rose up that was, for him to shoot the target. The Smiths, apparently just either had a deal with David Fincher, or David Fincher paid him about, $10 million of the $175 million budget. Say, can we license your entire library? Because at least 4 or 5 Smiths songs are used. Other songs are used also, and the Smiths are a very good band, but Jesus goddamn Christ, they must have been paid a goddamn mint for this. And then after the thing goes tits up, he wraps up, he goes, and after shooting the dominatrix, after she gets, a hole instead of her hole filled, that's terrible. Let's get back to the movie. What would John Wilkes Booth do? Hopefully something more interesting than this. So he then goes to Santo Domingo. He finds out that a woman that he liked or is with, or seemingly somebody that he just took sympathy on and lives in on a nice beach home with, I think, Magdala. I don't know. I don't care. None of the characters really goddamn matter. He, somebody had busted into the house to tie up loose ends because he screwed up. So then he goes on this globetrotting thing. There's a cab driver that drove the people to this. He gets capped. That was, I don't know why that was so funny to me. It just was under a bridge, and then he just goes off to another thing, goes off to New Orleans, and then ends up killing a lawyer who had all this information and helped fund his stuff, I guess. That was Charles Purnell, who, again, is a very good actor and tries to make the most of this scene. Before he ends up getting killed, there was a part where he pretends to be a recycle, bin transport man, and manages to get the receptionist Dolores, played by Carrie O'Malley, and she leaves him in there. She gets zip tied to the sink. He ends up shooting the lawyer with a nail gun, which was actually kind of cool. If only the movie had done more interesting stuff like that. And then he gets information at her house and snaps her neck to make it look like an accident so her kids can get her insurance. But you're not supposed to have empathy. Or any emotions, evidently. And then we go to Florida, where he ends up buying a 40 ounce of Old English. Oh, Florida, what are you like? He buys drugs and meat to drug a dog and then bust into the house of somebody apparently that was responsible for all this stuff. This movie apparently was based on a book, which, good, maybe it follows the book. I don't care. If you are going to just try to get more people into something, you probably should try giving a reason why we should care about any of these guys. He gets in a fight with some guy that sounded like a nice fight. I sure wish I could have seen it. He ends up busting the guy in the leg and busting the guy in the groin with a stabby part that does not look like stabbing, and ends up shooting him, and blood gets all over the toilet, me after pizza night, and then he manages to get away from the dog, and then throws a Molotov cocktail and burns down the house. Hopefully the dog's okay. And then the expert, that happens to be Tilda Swinton, they have a conversation over dinner, and he shoots her after she snaps a heel. And then he finds a guy named Claiborne, who we found, not Dolores Claiborne, even though that was actually kind of funny that they managed to put Dolores and Claiborne in the same thing without having the same name, because they are spelled entirely differently. I don't believe there was a Y in, let's see, I don't fucking care. Dolores Claiborne was, a movie that actually was fine. I believe it had Kathy Bates and a few others in it. Nevertheless, Claiborne was the name that he found talking to Dolores. And it turns out he was somebody that helped put more money into this thing to tie it up. And yeah, there you go. Fassbender basically goes to his apartment, gets this information out of him, and says, next time I'm going to find you, I'm going to break in easily, because I showed how easily I can break in. And then he's back in the Dominican Republic, and everything's fine. The killer is terrible. I'm sorry, it's terrible. It's not interesting. It's not a slow burn movie. It's not even a slow boil movie. The movie just exists. It exists to, be something that people can watch on Netflix. Maybe people will feel differently, but David Fincher, who's a very good director, and Fassbender, who's very good, and Tilda Swinton's totally goddamn wasted here. I felt like I needed to be wasted to enjoy this. Yeah, it gets an F, I'm sorry. And that doesn't mean a 1 out of 10, it just means an F because it's just not good. Anything below a 6 out of 10, if we were to go on the 1 to 10 scale, is considered an F. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ricklin. I'll see you soon.